I've been waiting for you. I just wanted to have a quiet, one-on-one chat after so long. It's been 8 years since Mia's real mom passed away in that tragic accident, and I've raised Mia as if she were my own child. What's for dinner tonight? Meatloaf. The meat was on sale today. Wow, that's awesome. We chatted about her club team, her homework, and her plans to hang out with friends. When we got home, I noticed my son Jack's shoes at the entrance, along with Samantha's his new wife. As we passed the hallway near the living room, I overheard their voices. I reached for the door but froze when I caught a single word from their conversation. Mia was also listening intently. What? No way. They couldn't be talking about that. Quickly and quietly, we packed a few things and slipped out without a sound. My name is Natalie, and I'm 67 years old. I lost my husband years ago, and now I live with my son Jack, his wife Samantha, and my granddaughter Mia. Mia is 16, a junior at the local high school. Grandma, can you come watch my next club game? Even though she's in her teenage years, she's still very close to me. But Samantha isn't Mia's real mom. Mia's real mom passed away suddenly in a car accident when Mia was just 8 years old. Those days are etched in my memory, no matter how much I try to forget. At the funeral, Mia screamed and sobbed uncontrollably, while Jack sat in a daze. The image of them at the cremation ceremony. It was heartbreaking and unbearable to witness. Even after returning to our daily lives, Mia cried every day, mourning her mom. It got so bad that she couldn't even go to school for a while. Jack, who should have been there to support her, instead grew distant. Mia's meals were always fast food that Jack picked up on his way home from work. Apparently, she ate them alone every single day. For a growing teenager like Mia, a diet of fast food every day was concerning from a nutritional standpoint. On top of that, Mia has a sesame allergy. I understand how dangerous that is better than anyone, as I have the same allergy myself. But I doubted whether Jack even remembered or considered this when buying her food. Sitting together as a family, sharing a warm, home-cooked meal, and talking about the events of the day. These simple moments of connection are especially crucial when a loved one is gone. In a time when emotional stability was already fragile, such an environment only pushed Mia further into isolation. I couldn't just stand by and watch. I had to protect her. It felt like my duty. That's why I suggested to Jack that I move in with them. Jack, how about I move in with you too? You've been so busy with work, and I'm worried about Mia's allergy. Yay, that might be for the best. It'd help me out a lot, he replied. Jack agreed without hesitation, but it didn't feel like gratitude. It felt more like he was relieved to have someone take over the responsibility. It was as if he saw Mia as a burden he could now pass on to me. He didn't seem to care about her well-being at all. He used to be such a kind boy, but he's changed. Seeing my own son act this way was a shock to me. Still, I told myself that maybe he was still processing the trauma of the accident. I remembered how after my husband died, I was so overwhelmed by my own grief that I couldn't think about anyone else. Maybe Jack just needed more time. For now, I would step in to heal Mia in his place. With that resolve, I moved into Jack's house and devoted myself to caring for Mia. We'd start our mornings cooking breakfast together. In the evenings, we'd water the garden together. Afterward, we'd sit down for dinner and share light-hearted conversations about our day. When Mia looked like she was about to cry, I would gently rub her back and silently support her small shoulders. One day, she would open up. I was determined to let her take her time at her own pace, even while juggling a part-time job. I stayed as close to her as possible. One evening, as the sun was setting, Mia spoke. "Grandma, Mom's never coming back, is she? I'll never see her again, right?" I nodded and answered quietly, "No, sweetheart, but she's always watching over you." Mia lowered her head for a moment. Then she looked up at me and gave a small smile. "You're right." From that moment, her face started to brighten little by little. She even started going outside with me for errands. The days she didn't cry grew more frequent. One day, she even said, "I think I'm ready to go back to school. Here's the class handouts. Mia's seat is by the window. Please tell her we can't wait to have her back." After saying that, Mia's classmates began bringing her handouts every week, starting from the week after the funeral. With their support, she slowly started going back to school. Before I knew it, more than 6 months had passed since the funeral. The pain and sadness of losing her beloved mom so suddenly will likely never fully heal. But even so, Mia has started smiling again, facing each day with determination and strength. She truly is resilient. For all the love her mom can no longer give her, I will make sure to love her wholeheartedly from now on. That is the responsibility I've been entrusted with. I made a vow to myself, and then, a few years passed. Mia has grown up so much. I hear there are still nights when she cries, thinking about her mom. But now, she can laugh as she recalls the happy memories they shared. Thankfully, she hasn't shown much rebellion during her teenage years. Her long hair and mature demeanor make me proud, though I can't help but feel a tinge of sadness seeing how much she's grown. Girls grow up so quickly, don't they? It reminded me of when my own daughter was her age. I couldn't help but feel nostalgic. Meanwhile, Jack seemed oblivious to Mia and focused solely on his work. He left for work early in the morning, and most nights he had dinner outside, since he no longer had to bring her fast food. There were even nights when he didn't come home at all, even on weekends. He claimed to be busy with work or business dinners, and was rarely around. At first, I thought he was throwing himself into work as a way to cope with his grief. But it became clear that wasn't the only reason. In the beginning, Mia desperately tried to reach out to him, hoping to rebuild their relationship. "Dad, tomorrow is the school performance. You'll come, right?" It was an event that had been planned for months. Mia had been asking Jack to attend for weeks. She had practiced her lines every night and was clearly looking forward to it. But Jack's response was dismissive. "Oh, yeah, you mentioned that. Sorry, I've got an important meeting tomorrow. I can't make it." Without saying a word, Mia lowered her head and retreated to her room. The sadness in her small frame was overwhelming. In the end, I went to the performance alone. "Mia, you were amazing. All that practice really paid off." "Thanks, Grandma." Mia smiled as she said those words, but there was a lingering sadness in her eyes. I couldn't help but wonder what I could possibly do for her. No matter how many comforting words I tried to offer, I couldn't seem to bring any light back into her eyes. There are some things that only a mom or dad can provide, things I simply couldn't fulfill. A wave of helplessness swept over me. After that, she gradually stopped talking to Jack. Of course, Jack never made any effort to talk to me either. The distance between them only grew deeper. Then, a few years ago, Jack suddenly took a job in another city. He rarely came home after that. Even during Christmas, it wasn't certain whether he'd come back. Because of that, we handled everything together. Not just family outings like summer camps or winter ski trips, sports days, music recitals, open house events, and parent-teacher conferences. I attended every single school event for Mia. I was the only grandma there, surrounded by polished moms, I sometimes worried if Mia ever felt embarrassed because of that. Those doubts crept into my mind from time to time, but she never showed any signs of displeasure. She always kept a smile on her face. "Grandma, let me cook dinner tonight. Your back hurts, doesn't it? Just sit down and relax." She was so thoughtful, always taking the initiative to help with chores. Raising such a kind-hearted young girl filled me with pride and joy. But that fragile happiness came crashing down one day. It was shortly after Mia started high school, on a quiet weekend afternoon. Her club practice had ended in the morning, and we were enjoying a peaceful afternoon together. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. When I opened the door, I saw Jack standing there. Jack. Yes, it was Jack, who had been practically out of touch since his transfer. And standing next to him was a flashy woman. Her brightly dyed hair was perfectly curled, and she wore a short skirt that showed off her thighs. Her nails were intricately painted. She had bright red lipstick and heavy false eyelashes. At first glance, she looked like she might be in her early 20s, but upon closer inspection, she seemed to be around 35. Jack then said something that left both Mia and me stunned. "I'm getting married to her." We were speechless. It had been 8 years since Jack became single. Sure, it wasn't surprising for him to have found a new partner, but with a child, this wasn't the same as single life. Shouldn't Mia's needs come first? Mia clearly had no idea about this and looked completely shocked. "Samantha," Jack said casually. "And this is my mom and my daughter, Mia. Nice to meet you." Samantha, the woman in question, lazily flicked her nails and didn't even bother to make eye contact with us. "Mia, here's your new mom. Isn't that great?" Jack said as he patted Mia's head, but her face was stiff with discomfort. "Come on in. Starting today, this is your home. Make yourself comfortable." Without waiting for us to respond, Jack let Samantha into the house. Several suitcases, presumably Samantha's, were carried inside as well. From that day forward, Jack and Samantha started living in our home. Apparently, they got married the next day. Jack already had his own bedroom, which had remained unchanged even during his time away for work. However, the room was too small and cluttered with his belongings, making it impossible for two people to share. There were a few unused rooms in the house that had been turned into storage. Naturally, we assumed Samantha would use one of those. But, are you kidding me? This room is way too small. My clothes and shoes won't fit. "You're right," Jack agreed. "Hey, Mia, your room is big, isn't it? Why don't you let Samantha use it instead? You're in high school. You don't need that much stuff, right?" Triggered by Samantha's complaint, Jack began pressuring Mia to give up her room. What? No way. Mia had been using that room since she was a child. It was a space filled with memories of her and her real mom. Before her mom passed away, they used to sleep there together every night. The walls were decorated with photos from when she was little. Her desk, bed, and equipment for her club activities were all in that room. There was no way all of it could fit into one of the smaller rooms. Her refusal was perfectly reasonable. When Mia said no, Jack didn't push further, and I thought he had dropped the matter. But to my horror, the next day when I returned from my part-time job, all of Mia's belongings had been moved out of her room. The cherished photos had been carelessly ripped from the walls, some even slightly torn. "Jack, what are you doing?" I exclaimed. "Isn't it obvious? We're making this Samantha's room." "Perfect timing. Can you help move Mia's stuff into one of the other rooms?" Jack showed no remorse as he and Samantha continued moving furniture and belongings into the room. I tried to stop them, but by then, all the large furniture had already been moved, and there was nothing I could do alone. That evening, Mia returned home holding one of the torn photos in her hand, visibly shaken. "Why?" I said. "No. This room is full of memories of my mom." It was the first time I had seen Mia express such raw emotion. But shockingly, Jack scolded her instead. "Mia, stop being so selfish. Your old mom isn't here anymore. Do you even know how many years it's been? Samantha is your mom now. How can you say that? I only have one mom." Mia's eyes brimmed with tears as she clenched her fists, desperately fighting back. After years of being neglected by her dad, she was suddenly expected to accept a stranger as her mom. There was no way she could do that. Watching Mia cry, I thought surely this would make Jack realize his mistake. But Jack was cruel. "Do you even know who's paying for this house? If you don't like it, leave." Mia froze, unable to respond, standing there in stunned silence. I noticed Samantha smirking smugly, clearly pleased with how things were unfolding. This was just the beginning of the conflicts with Samantha. Within days of moving in, frustrations began piling up. Samantha didn't do any housework or have a job. She'd wake up around noon, sprawl on the living room couch, and spend her time playing on her smartphone or watching TV. I don't know what she does while I'm at my part-time job. She's probably spending her time the same way. I end up making dinner because I have no choice, but of course, she doesn't lift a finger to help. She doesn't even set the table, let alone cook. Isn't this kind of bland? Are you cutting back on salt because of high blood pressure? It feels like I'm visiting some grandma's house in the countryside. The colors are so dull. And yet, despite doing nothing, she has plenty of complaints. Of course, she doesn't do the dishes either. After her shower, she sits back, satisfied, scrolling through her smartphone or watching TV. Sometimes, she'd get dressed up and go out. And on other nights, she'd stay home, talking loudly on the phone late into the night. Then, she'd finally go to bed at dawn. With her selfish lifestyle, she barely interacted with us. It was clear Samantha had no intention of becoming part of our family. But still, she was Jack's choice. There had to be something good about her. If she was getting along with Mia, that was all that mattered. It's fine as long as I'm the one who has to endure it. That's what I kept telling myself. But of course, things weren't going well between Mia and me either. "Mia, hand wash my sweater, okay? It was expensive, so don't stretch it out, or I won't forgive you. And fold the laundry properly this time." She constantly criticized Mia for the laundry, which Mia was already handling. Whenever Mia tried to respond, Samantha would snap back. "What? Are you saying you can't listen to your mom? How disrespectful." She shut Mia down every time. This wasn't a mother-daughter relationship. It was more like master and servant. Over time, Mia stopped arguing back and simply did whatever Samantha demanded. "See, you can do it if you try. You should have done it right from the start," Samantha would gloat, looking smug. Watching this unfold every day, I couldn't stay silent any longer. "Samantha, Mia is still in high school. She has school and works hard with her club team. If you're going to complain so much, why don't you do it yourself?" "Yay, I got it," Samantha replied dismissively, pouting in an exaggerated way. It was obvious she had no intention of listening to me. A few days later, around the time Mia's school was on a long holiday break, I came home from my part-time job after stopping by the supermarket. There, I saw Mia waiting for me. Apparently, her club practice had finished early that day. "I saw you going into the supermarket, Grandma. I wanted to catch you because it's been so long since we've had time to talk, just the two of us," she said with a smile. When was the last time we walked home together like this? What's for dinner tonight? Meatloaf. The meat was on sale. Wow, awesome. We talked about her club team, her homework, and her plans to hang out with friends while walking home. I happened to glance down and saw her shadow stretched out on the ground. She's so much taller than me now. It reminded me of when she was in elementary school, and we used to compare shadows to see who was taller. It's been so long since I felt this kind of peace. When we got home, I saw Samantha's shoes at the entrance. Weren't they supposed to be out all day? Looks like they're already back. When the two of them were home, I'd instinctively quiet down, trying to avoid any complaints. As we walked past the hallway near the living room, I heard their voices. I reached out to open the door, but stopped when I caught part of their conversation. I couldn't hear clearly, but I focused on the snippets of words I could make out. Mia was listening just as intently. What? No way. That can't be. Understanding what they were talking about sent a chill through both of us. We knew this wasn't good. We had to leave the house right away. Quietly, we packed our belongings, doing our best to make no noise, and slipped out of the house. A few hours later, we found ourselves on a bus heading to my daughter Lily's home. Mom, Mia, what's going on? Lily looked utterly surprised by our sudden arrival. Of course, she was. It wasn't every day that we appeared at her home, 2 hours away by bus, without any notice. I explained everything to Lily. I told her about Mia and Jack's strained relationship after Mia's real mom passed away. I described Jack's behavior since I started living with them. And then there was Samantha, who had suddenly entered our lives. I explained what Samantha and Jack had done to Mia. I also told them about the shocking conversation Mia and I had overheard just a few hours earlier at home. Lily and her husband Daniel were left speechless. For now, you two should stay here for a while, Lily said decisively. Right, Daniel. Of course, Daniel agreed. Make yourselves comfortable. I felt a wave of relief as Daniel's permission eased my worries. But just then, Mia's smartphone rang. Her shoulders trembled as she stared at the screen. When she saw who was calling, she covered her face with her hands, her whole body shaking. I immediately began rubbing her back, trying to calm her down. After a while, the sound of her phone stopped. A few minutes later, my own smartphone started ringing. When I looked at the screen, it displayed Jack. I took a deep breath and swiped to answer the call. Hey, Mom, where are you? I just got home, and nobody is here. His voice didn't sound angry, which gave me some relief. It seemed he hadn't realized we overheard their conversation. Lily called me out of the blue and insisted we visit, I said. Me and I came over since it's the start of a long break. We'll stay here for a few days. You and Samantha should enjoy some quiet time together. Lily's always so spontaneous, Jack muttered with a sigh. Fine, just let me know when you're coming back. With that, the call ended, and I felt a small sense of relief. It seemed we had successfully covered our tracks. When I explained the phone call to Mia, she appeared a little more at ease. For the next few days, we stayed at Lily's house. Both Lily and Daniel were incredibly kind and accommodating. Natalie, this is absolutely delicious, Daniel exclaimed during one dinner. It really is. You have to give me the recipe later, Lily added enthusiastically. It had been a long time since I'd been so genuinely praised by someone other than Mia, and it felt good. However, Mia still seemed uneasy. When she was chatting and laughing with Lily and Daniel, she appeared brighter than she had been at home lately. But in quieter moments, her restlessness showed. After hearing that conversation, it was no surprise. I felt the same way. I wished it had all been a bad dream. Even though I'd heard it with my own ears, I found myself doubting whether it had truly happened. I couldn't fathom how anyone could think of something so horrifying. How many times had I thought that? But this was reality. As much as I wanted to run away, I knew I had to stay strong for Mia. I vowed to protect her, no matter what. That was the promise I made to myself. One day, as we continued living like this, "Natalie, everything is ready," he said. Daniel looked at me with a serious expression. It was the signal to begin a certain plan. I took a deep breath, then pulled out my smartphone and made a call. The person on the other end of the line was Jack. "Hi, Jack. We've had a relaxing time at Lily's, and I think it's time for us to head back. Would it be all right if we took the bus back tomorrow morning?" "Sure, both of you. Be safe. Samantha and I will have dinner ready when you get here," Jack replied, sounding unusually cheerful. It was strange. Jack never said anything that sounded considerate or offered to prepare a meal. That night, I found myself questioning everything over and over again. Was this really the right thing to do? Was I just acting out of self-satisfaction? I stroked Mia's hair as she slept peacefully beside me. She had grown so much, yet her sleeping face looked just like it did when she was a little girl. Memories of our time together came flooding back. Since we started living together when she was 8, I had been there for every step of her growth. It was like raising a second child. She was truly precious, like my own daughter. But could I really endanger someone so dear to me? I was deeply conflicted. Yet, this plan wasn't just mine, it was something she herself had agreed to. Together, we were determined to see it through. With that resolve, I closed my eyes and drifted into a restless sleep. The next morning arrived. "We're really doing this, aren't we?" "Yes. At this point, we have no other choice." With concerned expressions, Lily and Daniel saw us off as Mia and I boarded the bus. As we neared the bus stop closest to home, my nerves grew more intense. Mia, sitting next to me, seemed just as uneasy. She held her smartphone as if reading, but she hadn't turned a page in ages. Before long, we arrived at the bus stop. We got off and began walking toward the house, our steps heavy with apprehension. I wished we could just keep walking and never reach the house. That thought crossed my mind for a fleeting moment. In truth, I wanted to turn around, get back on the bus with her, and return to Lily's house right away. My desire to avoid going back clashed with the reality that we had to face it. Mia, lost in thought, walked with her head down. Before we knew it, we were standing in front of the house. As we opened the door, a delicious aroma wafted out. "Welcome back. It's been hot outside, hasn't it? Are you okay?" Jack greeted us warmly, a tone I wasn't used to hearing. In the living room, Samantha stood wearing an apron, a rare sight. "Welcome home. I'm so happy you're back. I made lots of food to celebrate. I'm sorry for being so selfish before," she said with an exaggerated smile. Behind her, the dining table was covered with dishes: chicken, potatoes, paella, pizza, salad, and soup. The variety was striking, and they were all things Mia and I loved. I glanced at Mia, and she looked back at me. We exchanged a small nod, careful not to let Jack or Samantha notice. "Come on, let's eat before it gets cold," Samantha urged. "Hey, Mia, you love chicken, don't you? Dig in," Jack added with an eager smile, practically forcing us into our chairs. "Actually, we ate on the bus earlier," I said casually. "Mia, are you hungry?" "Not really," Mia replied softly. "Me neither. I think I'll unpack first," I said, standing up. Jack immediately blocked my way. "You can do that later. Eat while it's warm." It'd be rude to Samantha after all the effort she put into cooking. Their irritation was evident as Mia and I continued to resist. Hey, I worked really hard on this. At least take one bite. Come on, try it already. Samantha finally lost her patience and raised her voice. As she spoke, she scooped up some paella with a spoon and shoved it toward me. It looked like she was about to force it into my mouth. At that moment, I heard the sound of the front door opening, followed by footsteps. Then the living room door burst open, and Daniel walked in. "I've heard everything," he said firmly. He held his smartphone up high, the screen facing us. On it, I saw Mia's name and the words "call in progress." Unbeknownst to Jack and Samantha, Daniel had been listening in on the conversation through Mia's phone. This all started the day Mia and I overheard Jack and Samantha's chilling conversation. "They're allergic to sesame, right? What if we just mix a ton of sesame into their food? That should trigger anaphylactic shock." "That's perfect. If it's Samantha, she can just play dumb and say she didn't know. Then we'll finally be free." They had been plotting to get rid of Mia and me. After Samantha moved in, I had explained our sesame allergies to her in detail. I told her that even small amounts in sauces or processed foods had to be avoided. I also made it clear that consuming sesame in large amounts could cause anaphylactic shock, which could be fatal. They had twisted that knowledge into a horrifying plan. After overhearing that conversation, I knew we couldn't stay in that house any longer. That was why we had rushed to Lily's house that night. The reason we went to Lily's house instead of staying at a nearby hotel was simple. Daniel is an active police officer. Although his jurisdiction didn't cover our area due to the distance, we had no one else to turn to. When Mia played the recording of Jack and Samantha's conversation, Daniel was left speechless. "No way," he muttered. Lily, too, couldn't hide her shock. After listening to our story and considering the recording, Daniel concluded that this situation could involve criminal intent. He then initiated his own investigation. What he discovered left us stunned. Samantha had consulted with an insurance company about collecting potential payouts. Jack had disposed of Mia's emergency injection pen, an essential tool for people with severe allergies to prevent anaphylactic shock. Throwing away such critical medicine was horrifying and inhuman. The thought of disposing of such vital medicine was horrifying. It was something no sane person would ever do. Although Daniel was able to gather corroborating evidence quickly, it wasn't enough to justify an arrest just yet. Still, Daniel persevered, enlisting the help of his colleagues and conducting a thorough investigation. Eventually, he uncovered text messages between Jack and Samantha, in which they discussed the details of their plan. To obtain even more definitive evidence, Daniel proposed that Mia and I return home. Of course, even knowing the plan in advance, it came with inherent risks, but to protect Mia, I knew I had to do it. Following Daniel's advice, I made the difficult decision to go back home for the sake of the plan. But I'll go alone. Mia should stay here. Without her injection pen, it's too dangerous. I naturally intended to return by myself. I was determined to face the danger alone. I didn't want Mia involved any further. But Mia refused. "No, Grandma, I want to protect you too. Besides, if I'm not there, they might change their plan." She looked straight into my eyes, her gaze unwavering. When did she become so strong? I couldn't disregard her determination. She also had a point. If Jack and Samantha were targeting both of us, they might alter their plan if I returned alone. This time, we know their plan, so we can prepare countermeasures in advance. But if they tried the same thing without us knowing, would we even realize it in time? That would be even more dangerous. In the end, we agreed that Mia would come with me, on the condition that she avoid unnecessary risks. Which brings us to the scene before us now, a table full of food. Samantha thought she had cleverly hidden the sesame seeds, but they were visible in places on the plates, sprinkled on some dishes. Whether it was due to her lack of cooking skills or simple carelessness, the plan was sloppy. Still, the amount of sesame likely laced throughout the dishes was alarming. When I first heard of their plan, I desperately hoped it wasn't true. Could my own son really do something so horrifying? I thought perhaps we had overreacted to an offhanded comment. Up until I saw that dish, part of me still held on to some hope, but that hope was swiftly shattered. I never wanted Mia to witness something like this. The idea that Dad could do such a thing, her shock must be unimaginable. While I stood there in disbelief, Lily, along with Daniel, gently led me outside. Afterward, Daniel searched the house thoroughly and found gasoline, a blowtorch, and rolls of duct tape in the storage room. Clearly, these were tools prepared to cover up any evidence after we suffered anaphylactic shock from the sesame. This conduct potentially constitutes assault. We'll need to bring you to the station for questioning. I only did it because he told me to. This is all his fault," Samantha desperately shouted, pointing a trembling finger at Jack in a frantic attempt to defend herself. But Jack didn't say a word. He just slumped to the ground, silent and motionless. Moments later, the officers Daniel had called escorted both of them out of the house. As soon as they were gone, the tension that had held me upright snapped. I collapsed onto the sofa, drained of all energy. I never imagined my life would be in danger, especially from my own son. For Mia, it was her father. For me, it was Jack. We were supposed to be an ordinary family. Where did it all go so wrong? With my head hanging low, I bit my lower lip hard, trying to hold back the whirlwind of emotions. I hadn't realized I was trembling until Lily wrapped her arms around me gently. "Mom, it's okay now." The strength in her embrace was the only thing keeping me together in that moment. Later, Jack and Samantha were questioned by the police. From what we learned, their motive was money. They were after my inheritance, my life insurance policy, and the savings Mia's biological mom had left behind. All of it had fueled their horrific plan. And then, an even more shocking truth came to light. It turned out that Samantha had married Jack solely for his money. She had been obsessed with nightclubs for years, spending extravagantly on her favorite male companions. Since she had only worked part-time, her income wasn't enough to support her lavish lifestyle. She had found several men willing to support her financially, even resorting to illegal activities in the process. Among them, she set her sights on Jack as her primary target, eventually leading to their marriage. Jack had no idea that she was obsessed with nightclubs and spent her time and money there. As part of their marriage agreement, Jack gave Samantha more than $3,000 a month and allowed her to avoid any housework or job responsibilities. No wonder she didn't do any chores or work when Samantha occasionally went out at night. It turned out she was heading to those very nightclubs. All the questions and doubts I'd had about her behavior started clicking into place, like pieces of a puzzle. It was clear just how deeply Jack had fallen for Samantha. However, when news of the situation reached Jack's workplace, it didn't take long for him to be fired. "You've been spending my money on other men. What the hell you're doing?" "Excuse me, I married you, didn't I? That means I can spend the money however I like. Wasn't that part of the deal? And if you're broke now, you're useless to me." The two had a massive argument, and soon after, they divorced. The incident quickly became a hot topic in our small town. Neighbors would often approach me, saying things like, "You've really been through a lot, haven't you?" Although some of the gossip was exaggerated or completely false, I decided to let it go. In such a small town, it was clear that they wouldn't have much of a future here. As for Mia and me, even though we'd done nothing wrong, the widespread rumors made it increasingly difficult to go about our daily lives. So we decided to make a fresh start and move closer to Lily's house. Mia, you'll have to change schools. Are you okay with that? I knew how sensitive kids her age could be to change. If Mia didn't want to move, I wouldn't force her. But Mia gave me a brave smile and said, "It's fine. Being near Dad scares me more. I'll be okay anywhere." Her resilience filled me with warmth. Just before the end of the school break, we moved to our new town. I worried whether Mia would be able to adjust to her new high school. What if she didn't make friends? Would we end up regretting the move? But to my relief, Mia quickly made friends and settled in. She even told me excitedly about meeting another girl who had also been raised by her grandma, just like her. She joined a club team and seemed genuinely happy with her new life. One day, Daniel came to me with a suggestion. "Natalie, have you thought about adopting Mia? I think it would be a good step for both of you moving forward." "That's a wonderful idea," Lily chimed in with enthusiasm. But I hesitated. Adopting Mia would make her officially my daughter. I'd love nothing more, as I already cherished her as if she were my own. But I couldn't help wondering if Mia would feel the same. She only has one biological mom. Wouldn't it be arrogant of me to try to take on that role? Perhaps it would be better for us to remain as we are now, without altering our relationship. But then, Mia, who was sitting beside me, gave a shy little smile. "I think it's a great idea. Grandma, you've already been like a mom to me." Her words filled me with an overwhelming warmth. "Really? You mean that? Then I want to be your mom, Mia." I smiled through the tears I was holding back and gently took her hand. Her hand, now bigger than mine, felt as if it was softly embracing my heart. About a month later, the paperwork was finalized, and we officially became mother and daughter. Since the incident, Mia has grown even kinder and stronger. Recently, she's expressed her dream of becoming a police officer. "I want to protect people like you and me, Grandma. I want to be an officer like Daniel." Her determination shone brightly, and I couldn't help but feel proud. "Grandma, do you want some help with dinner tonight?" "That's sweet of you, but don't you have homework? Go finish that first." I want to be the strength that helps her move forward. When I imagine her working toward her dreams, it fills me with a quiet joy. When the day comes that she achieves those dreams, I know I'll send her off with pride, my heart swelling with happiness. Until then, I'll do everything I can to support her. With that thought, I stirred the pot on the stove, feeling a renewed sense of purpose.
Hurry up and open it. It's heavy. Sharon dropped the garbage bag at the entrance and bent over, trying to catch her breath. "If it's that hard for you, you don't have to bring it all the way here." When I said that, Sharon gave me a haughty look. "Disposing of trash costs money. If I can get rid of it at your place, it's cheaper. If you want me to take it back, just give it to me. Here." She thrust her hand forward, gesturing impatiently. I tried desperately to lift the garbage bag, but my restricted body couldn't manage it. Only a groan of frustration escaped my lips. Sharon just watched me with a smirk. "At this rate, it'll take you all night. I'm leaving now. This is a waste of time." With that, Sharon left me standing there. I was at a loss, realizing I couldn't move the garbage bag from the entrance. If it stayed there, it would be in the way, and I wouldn't be able to get outside. I put all my strength into moving the bag with both arms. Finally, it moved a little. Feeling a glimmer of hope, I pulled harder, but the bag, already heavy, scraped against the floor and tore open. Caught off guard, I banged my arm hard against the cupboard.
Ouch! I've had enough!
Clutching my arm, I looked at the garbage spilled all over the entrance. I realized I could have just divided the contents into smaller bags instead of dragging the whole thing. As I began picking up the trash, I noticed something strange.
Could it be?
Seeing what was in the bag, I understood Sharon's true intention. Tears began to flow from my eyes naturally. My name is Verity. Now, I am sitting at a desk in a dim room at dusk, making handmade jewelry. The only sounds are the tinkling of the jewelry and the ticking of the clock. Outside, I can faintly hear the cheerful voices of children playing. That's enough for today. Though the work was not finished, my eyes were blurred, and my fingers wouldn't move as they should. If I push myself too hard, I'll make mistakes and have to start over. So, even if I feel I can do more, it's wise to stop. When I put down the tools, I realized for the first time that the room had gotten dark. Oh, it's already this late. I muttered, knowing no one in the house would respond. Feeling a slight loneliness, I maneuvered my wheelchair to turn on the light switch. As the room lit up, I saw the black garbage bags piled in the corner. But I didn't want to look at them. What should I make for dinner tonight? Quickly putting away my tools, I went to the kitchen to start preparing dinner. Outside, I could still hear the children's cheerful voices. As I chopped vegetables, tears suddenly fell from my eyes. Why do I have to live such a miserable life? As I thought this, the tears wouldn't stop, falling onto the cabbage on the cutting board. My current condition is due to a car accident over 20 years ago. Since then, I've been in and out of hospitals, living in a wheelchair. Because of that, I couldn't take proper care of my son, Zeph. My husband, Jake, tried his best, but he was busy with work, so Zeph was often left alone. I can never forget the sight of him, a little boy, sitting forlornly in the middle of a dark room when Jake and I came home late at night. I truly feel sorry for Zeph. The emotional scars he suffered greatly affected our lives. He had become a delinquent. He ignored both Jake and me, constantly fighting with his classmates, leading to repeated calls from the school. Still, I tried to stay positive, hoping that one day I could reconcile with Zeph. To help supplement Jake's income, I started making jewelry from home. However, Zeph not only didn't reform, but he also started demanding money and even became physically abusive towards me. Jake's collapse was likely due to the stress from work and family. Despite everything, he was always worried about Zeph, right up until he was gone. Perhaps feeling some sense of responsibility, Zeph married his girlfriend Sharon and moved out soon after. All I was left with was an overly spacious house and my jewelry making. I occasionally sold them at flea markets, which allowed me to interact with the neighbors. Talking to people only happened during those moments. As I reminisced and cried about the past, the doorbell rang. Given the time, it had to be her. I quickly wiped my tears and hurried to the door as fast as I could. However, the person on the other side was impatiently knocking. Hold on a minute. I'm opening it now. As soon as I unlocked the door, my son's wife, Sharon, barged in with an angry huff. She was wearing a suit, likely coming straight from work, and was holding a black garbage bag in her hand. The bag seemed full, its opening tightly secured.
Why didn't you open the door sooner? You're so slow.
Immediately upon entering, Sharon started yelling at me, her face flushed with anger.
I'm not here for fun, you know. I have to check on Verity, so I came. I'm sorry, but it's hard to move quickly in a wheelchair. Stop making excuses. It's your lack of exercise. Here, Take this garbage out. It'll be good exercise for you.
With that, she attempted to throw the garbage bag into the room.
Please stop. It's really difficult with my legs like this. The house will be buried in garbage at this rate.
Desperately, I stretched out my arms to stop her from throwing the bag. But despite my efforts, the bag left her hand, arcing through the air before hitting the floor. Why would she do something so cruel? Tears I thought I had wiped away started to fall again, but I kept my head down, not wanting Sharon to see. Sharon bent down.
Crying won't get you any help. You're not a child, so pull yourself together.
And whispered. I gritted my teeth in frustration, but with my physical limitations, I couldn't fight back. Sharon knew this too well. She laughed mockingly and patted my shoulder in a seemingly friendly manner.
You probably don't have anything to offer since you're so slow. It's boring here, so I'm leaving.
She opened the door to leave but suddenly turned back, looking at me seriously.
I'll be back. That garbage isn't sorted, so make sure Verity does it. Otherwise, you'll get in trouble, understand?
I was too angry to respond. As soon as the door closed, I quickly locked it. Since Jake passed away, Sharon has been coming to my house every day. It's not out of kindness to check on me. She comes to hurl insults and, lately, to throw garbage at me. I don't know what's in those bags, but they're heavy, and I can't bring myself to take them outside. Picking up the bag from the floor, I added it to the pile in the corner of the room. At this point, I didn't care about anything anymore. If I was going to spend my old age in loneliness, I might as well be buried in garbage and leave this world. After I'm gone, the neighbors will be shocked to see this mess. And Sharon's actions will be exposed. For me, it was the only way to resist, and in a way, it had become something I looked forward to.
Why did he marry such a woman?
Still, my frustration wouldn't go away, so I decided to call Zeph. I'll get him to talk to Sharon. Luckily, Zeph answered right away.
What's up? Are you feeling sick or something? No, it's not that. Sharon's been awful to me again.
Then, I started detailing everything that had happened. But he didn't listen to the end. I was still talking.
You're going on and on. Basically, you don't like Sharon, right? Just say that from the start instead of rambling.
When he interrupted roughly. Why are you being so mean?
I'm having a hard time too. Your hard time isn't my problem. Sharon treats me well. You must have done something to piss her off, right? I didn't do anything. Don't just make stuff up.
I knew my voice was turning tearful in my desperation. I had no one else to rely on, so I wanted Zeph to be my only ally. However, from his past experiences, Zeph didn't see me as his mother. He probably thought it was too convenient for me to cry to him now. But even though Sharon's actions troubled me deeply, he wouldn't even listen. Anyway, I'm busy.
You must have too much time on your hands, bothering Sharon. Reflect on your own behavior before complaining to me. That's so cruel, so unfair. What's so unfair? You never cared about me, only yourself.
Serves you right. Then Zeph laughed loudly. His laugh pierced my ears like sharp nails. After laughing for a while, he hung up. The room was already enveloped in the darkness of night. I need to turn on the lights, I need to make dinner. I thought this in my head, but Zeph's words and Sharon's actions hurt so much that I couldn't bring myself to do anything. I'd rather. Just as I thought that, a sharp pain shot through my chest as if my throat was closing up. I must stop thinking such foolish thoughts. I maneuvered my wheelchair to turn on the lights, plated the chopped cabbage, and heated up frozen fried chicken to place beside it. No matter how hard it is, no matter the cruel words thrown at me, I have to live. A few days passed after that. Sharon continued to come at the same time, saying nasty things and throwing trash bags into my room. I silently piled them in the corner, but it seemed they had reached their limit. Some of the pile had collapsed, starting to take over the room. I had stubbornly refused to throw out the trash, but now that the room was filling up, the disgust was winning. Apparently, a neighbor had seen Sharon's behavior. When I was outside, they approached and gently rubbed my back. "I know you've been spoken to harshly. I didn't want to interfere, but if you need anything, please tell me."
Thank you. I might ask for help someday.
After that conversation, I parted ways with my neighbor, but I was genuinely happy. I had believed that I had no one on my side. Feeling a bit more confident, I decided to ask Sharon to take her trash back. Around 6 p.m., Sharon arrived at my house. As usual, she was dressed in her suit, but the garbage bag she was holding was much larger than usual. It seemed she had a hard time bringing it over, as her face was red and she was breathing heavily.
Hurry up and open it, it's heavy.
Sharon dropped the garbage bag at the entrance and bent over to catch her breath.
If it's that hard, you didn't have to bring it over.
When I said that, Sharon glared at me from beneath her brows.
You don't get it. It costs money to dispose of trash. If I can get rid of it at Verity's place, it saves money. My house isn't a dump. Take it back.
I tried to lift the garbage bag off the floor, but it was too heavy to move.
What's inside this? It won't budge at all.
I tried to pull it, but my frail body couldn't manage it.
If you really want me to take it back, hand it over.
Come on. Sharon reached out her hand and moved it impatiently. I struggled to lift the garbage bag, but my weak body couldn't do it. Only a helpless groan escaped my mouth. Sharon just watched and laughed at my efforts.
Looks like it would take all night. I'm leaving. This is a waste of my time.
With that, Sharon left, leaving me with the garbage bag I couldn't move. I was at a loss, unable to move the bag from the entrance. If it stayed there, it would block my way out. What if there was a fire? I wouldn't be able to escape. Desperately, I put all my strength into moving the garbage bag. Finally, it moved a little. Seeing a glimmer of hope, I pulled the bag harder, but the combination of its weight and the friction against the floor caused the bag to tear. Unexpectedly, I ended up hitting my arm hard against the cabinet. Ouch, I hate this. Holding my arm, I looked at the contents scattered across the entrance. Why didn't I think to just take out the items one by one? As I picked up the trash, I noticed something strange.
No way, is this?
I picked it up and found it was a retort pouch of curry. And the pouch wasn't even opened. What does this mean? Did Sharon put this in the garbage by mistake? I was engrossed as I tore the bag open to check the contents. It wasn't just curry, there were pasta ingredients and retort foods stuffed inside. No, it wasn't just retort foods. There were also dried pasta, canned fish, and even cash wrapped in a plastic bag. Why are these things in here? Leaving the bag at the entrance, I went back inside and opened the piled-up garbage bags one by one. Sure enough, there was no garbage at all. All of them were filled with retort foods, canned goods, non-perishable foods, and cash. I stood there, bewildered, not understanding what was happening. With all the bags containing the same things, it couldn't be a mistake. But why did she choose such a roundabout way to hand it over? I would have to ask her directly to understand. I cleaned up the scattered items in the entrance and waited for the next day to come. And indeed, Sharon came at the same time the next day. I made no mention of it and simply motioned for her to come into the room. Sharon hesitated for a moment, lowering her eyes, but then quickly looked up and followed me into the room. She looked around the piles of garbage bags in the room with a blank expression.
Did you really think it was all garbage and never looked inside? I'm sorry, I didn't realize you were trying to help me.
Sharon said nothing, just looked at me, then suddenly twisted her face and covered it with both hands, starting to cry.
Verity, I'm so sorry for saying such terrible things. It's okay. You must have your reasons, right? Tell me everything.
With tears, Sharon began to explain.
Actually, all of this was under his orders. Zeph's? Why would he do such a thing?
It was true Zeph hated me, but I couldn't believe he would go this far.
Zeph is in financial trouble. In financial trouble? That can't be true.
I found it hard to believe Zeph was struggling financially. When Jake passed away, he left a significant inheritance. Zeph had received the majority of that inheritance. I, too, had hoped to rely on that inheritance due to my physical limitations. But because I felt guilty for leaving him lonely, I didn't complain about Zeph taking the inheritance. Yet, the idea that it wasn't enough seemed strange. When I pointed this out to Sharon, she hung her head.
It's for business. Zeph started a cafe to launch his business.
I hadn't heard about it, but apparently, Zeph had started a business a few years ago. With his charming exterior, he managed to get approvals from officials and banks to open the shop. But things didn't go as planned, and the business failed. Zeph, now deep in debt, turned his eyes to my inheritance. I refused at first. Yes, I had heard about you from Zeph. I knew he hated you. But I couldn't bring myself to do something so cruel to someone with disabilities. Sharon sat on the floor, hugging herself as if to shield herself from the world.
Yet you had no choice but to do it.
Sharon nodded and lifted her shirt to show her bare back. Seeing it made me gasp. There were painful-looking bruises clearly visible. He pretends to be kind when talking to people outside, but he was cruel to me. Sharon put her shirt back down. He didn't trust me either. He ordered me to document everything I did to you.
And still, you resisted by mixing in not garbage, but ready-to-eat meals.
Sharon shook her head sadly at my words.
That's part of it, but there's more. Zeph is using me to corner you. But he's not directly involved. If anything happens, I'll be the one blamed.
Sharon continued, scratching her head in frustration.
So it was my insurance. I thought if I insisted it was food and not garbage, my punishment would be lighter. So I didn't mind if you threw it away. But why are you telling me the truth now? A neighbor almost called the police. So I realized this was pointless. But Zeph is also scary, and I don't know what to do.
Sharon didn't seem to be lying. She seemed genuinely distressed, scratching her hair roughly. Seeing that, a fierce anger rose within me. I don't mind if Zeph hates me, and if it costs me my life, so be it. He can use my inheritance to pay off his debts or invest in his business as he pleases. If that satisfies Zeph, I can say I've fulfilled my duty as a parent. There isn't much more I can do for my son. However, I cannot forgive him for resorting to violence against his wife, Sharon, to implicate her in his own sins. I held Sharon's hand.
Sharon, thank you for telling me. Let's stop Zeph together. But Verity, what can we do? Don't worry, I have a plan.
With that, I immediately began preparations to help Sharon. First, I spoke to the neighbors to explain the situation and our upcoming act. I wanted to ensure they wouldn't be alarmed by any loud noises. Next, Sharon and I planned for her to film me while she hurled insults at me.
Verity, here we go.
With those words, Sharon threw a trash bag at me.
Take that. Stop it, don't.
We changed outfits to film multiple scenarios without Zeph noticing. It was surprisingly fun, and we ended up with more vivid footage than expected. Do you think this is enough?
Sharon, could you also film Zeph harassing you?
Sharon, seemingly enjoying herself, smiled broadly and agreed enthusiastically.
Hidden camera work, got it. I'll handle it.
Sharon returned to Zeph for now. Next, I decided to stage a desperate phone call to Zeph. I aimed to sound as distressed and at my limit as possible.
Zeph, I can't take it anymore. Please help me.
Of course, Zeph wouldn't genuinely be concerned. Each time he heard my anguished voice, he likely laughed at my suffering. After several fake calls, it was time for the final act.
Zeph, I don't want to live anymore. This will be my last call. I'm sorry for everything.
Even I was impressed by my own performance. Zeph seemed completely fooled by my act. He told Sharon,
"That old woman won't last much longer. We'll finally get the inheritance."
Naturally, Sharon recorded all of this. We successfully captured videos of him harassing her, securing all the evidence we needed. Sharon took the evidence and her essentials and sought refuge at my house. I had already informed her workplace of the situation, so Zeph's visit would be in vain. From my house, Sharon contacted a lawyer to file a complaint about Zeph's misconduct. A few days after filing the complaint, Zeph called me. As soon as I answered,
"Hey! Do you know where Sharon went?"
he barked.
"Oh, Zeph! I don't want to live anymore." "Shut up. I don't care about you." "Where is Sharon?" "I don't know. I haven't seen her."
It was clear over the phone that Zeph was frantic.
"Don't play dumb. She must be with you. I'm coming over."
About an hour later, Zeph actually showed up. From behind the door, he spoke in a suddenly gentle voice.
"Mom, it's been a while. Let me in. I brought some treats. Let's eat together."
He said that and showed a paper bag full of snacks to the monitor. A while ago, I might have believed him, but since I heard everything from Sharon, I knew his behavior was fake.
"Sharon isn't here. Sorry, go home."
Not here? Then why doesn't Mom open the door? If she's not here, it's not a problem, right? Zeph kept talking in a gentlemanly manner. Indeed, his outward appearance seemed good.
"That's not it. The room is messy, so I can't open it." "Then I'll clean it up. So open the door."
"No, I won't open it. Go home."
"Hey, you old hag, enough already."
Because I firmly refused, Zeph showed his true colors.
"You bastard, you have some nerve to defy me with that body. Prepare yourself."
Zeph lost his cool and started kicking the door with fierce force. The violent sound echoed through the room.
"Open up! Open the door! You old hag!"
The door was made of sturdy metal, so I didn't think it would open, but even so, Zeph's almost insane intensity was terrifying.
"I'm scared. What if the door gets broken down?"
Sharon had her hand on my shoulder, but I could feel she was trembling quite a bit. "Sharon, call the police."
Understood.
While Sharon was calling the police, I spoke to Zeph.
"Zeph, it's useless to do this, so stop."
However, my words no longer reached his ears. After a while, I heard shouting from outside, and the sound of kicking stopped. Looking through the monitor, I saw several neighbors gathering. Zeph, being restrained by men, seemed unable to resist.
Let go! Let go of me!
But soon the police arrived and arrested Zeph. After confirming that, Sharon and I went outside to face Zeph.
Hey, Mom. Tell these guys something.
Sorry, but everyone knows your true nature.
Give up. Don't be ridiculous. It's your fault. My life is ruined because of you.
Zeph was taken away without apologizing to Sharon till the end. The neighbors also comforted me with kind words.
Thank you, Verity.
Sharon said that too and gently held my hand. After that, Zeph faced the consequences of his actions. Someone had recorded the incident and uploaded the video to the internet. The image of Zeph kicking the door and shouting spread quickly on social media, revealing his true nature to everyone. Because of that, all the misdeeds he committed in his student days, the cleverly hidden blackmail and fraudulent acts, were all exposed. Naturally, he lost his credibility in the community, his business failed completely, and Zeph had to pay huge compensation and debt repayment. Adding to his woes, Sharon asked for a divorce. The evidence she collected was decisive, and he had to pay a large alimony. 3 days ago, Zeph contacted me, saying he would come to my house after losing everything. In the meantime, I made a plan to get Zeph back on his feet. Please, Mom, help me. Zeph, who came to my house, said that and apologized deeply in front of me many times. I'm really sorry. I have no one else to rely on but you, Mom. Please do something.
I'm sorry, Zeph. As your mother, I want to help you. But I'm in this condition, and I don't have enough savings. So I talked to your uncle.
At that point, I called out to the uncle who was waiting in the back room. The door opened vigorously, and from there came out a scary-looking man with a shaved head and sunglasses. This man was in the construction business.
He said he'd love to hire Zeph. Apparently, he was short-staffed.
He wasn't just there for the job, but also as a precaution, like a bodyguard in case anything went wrong. Zeph made a face and stepped back, clearly displeased with my suggestion. But then, my uncle walked over and grabbed him by the collar. Come on, let's go. Don't worry, my workplace is in the mountains. You'll stay in a dorm there. There's nothing else around, so you'll be able to pay off your debt quickly. Now, get up.
No, Mom!
Zeph reached out to me, but sadly, his hand couldn't reach. He was taken away by my uncle. As I watched them leave, Sharon came out of the room where my uncle had been. It's unfortunate, but it can't be helped.
Yes, but I'm sure Zeph will manage somehow.
Even though Sharon had divorced Zeph, she was actually an orphan with no family to turn to. Why don't you live with me? I suggested, and she gladly accepted. Oh my, it's already this late. Verity, you have your class, right? I'll drive you since I'm heading out to job hunt. Since that incident, I started talking more with the neighbors. In the course of these interactions, I was encouraged to start a handmade craft class. At first, I was confused, but having done it for years, I had become quite skilled without realizing it. Now, I teach many students, and my income has surpassed what I made doing side jobs.
All right, please do.
With Sharon pushing my wheelchair, we left the house. We walked slowly through the warm early summer light. There was a time when the future seemed uncertain, but now, my days are bright and joyful. One day, as I returned home from my usual night shift, I noticed that the house lights were on, which was unusual. Lately, my daughter Alethea would only come home when I wasn't there, so it was rare for us to be in the house together. When I opened the door and stepped inside, I saw Alethea rummaging through the closet.
Stop acting like a thief!
Maybe it was because I was tired from work, but those words came out before I could say welcome home to my daughter, whom I hadn't seen in a while.
What? This is my house, too. What's here is mine as well,
she said, holding a bank statement I had been saving in her name for years.
Wait a minute, that's something I've been saving carefully to give to you when you grow up. What are you planning to use it for?
When I asked her frantically, she replied indifferently, I'm getting married. I had so many questions. Who is he? Where did you meet him? Have you met his family? What about the wedding? But she wouldn't answer any of them.
You're an embarrassment. Don't come to the wedding. As far as anyone knows, my mom is out of the picture, divorced and gone.
With those final words, she left the house. Everything inside me crumbled. I had put her first, always, raising her on my own. My very existence was being denied. I was paralyzed in the middle of the room she had ransacked, but eventually, I realized I couldn't stay like this, and I made a phone call. Months passed, and today is her wedding day. I watched her from the shadows in her bridal gown. I never wanted to see her in such a beautiful dress like this. Today was the first time I saw the groom's face. An older, kind-looking man smiled at her. Are you ready for the plan? The woman next to me asked, and I nodded firmly. My name is Francis, and I'm 47 years old. I live alone in a cheap apartment. I used to live with my daughter Alethea, but she left months ago, and we haven't been in touch since. Even though I called her my daughter, we're not related by blood. She's the stepchild of my late husband, David, who I married after both of us had gone through divorces. David had divorced his first wife 3 years before we met because she cheated on him. In a furious custody battle, he won the right to raise Alethea. But the year after we married, he was diagnosed with cancer.
Treat her like your own daughter. Be firm but kind.
Those were his last words before he passed away. It's been 13 years since then. The only thing left was me and Alethea, who wasn't related to me by blood and who I'd known for less than a year. When Alethea was still in elementary school, I worked desperately to support her. I had children from my previous marriage. But we divorced due to irreconcilable differences. Without my parents' support and as a housewife, I found it hard to raise my children, and custody went to my ex-husband. But now, there was no one to protect her but me. Determined to raise a child properly this time, I didn't slack off on work or house chores. Meanwhile, Alethea barely reacted to me from the time David brought her to our home. I remember the first time I met Alethea, before David and I were married, when he invited me to his house. Nice to meet you, Alethea. She was a bit younger than my children from my previous marriage. I crouched down to meet Alethea's gaze and spoke to her. However, she only briefly made eye contact before quickly returning to her play.
Alethea, this is the woman I told you about who's going to be your new mother.
Even though David said this, her attitude did not change. And that was understandable. A young girl, still in elementary school, suddenly loses her mother, and after a while, a new woman is introduced as her mother. It's natural for her to show some resistance. Moreover, after divorcing my ex-husband, I started working at a club. It was at that club where I met David. He came to the club where I was working as a customer and apparently fell in love with me at first sight. He started coming to the club regularly, but David was different from the other customers. He didn't cause any trouble with alcohol like the others, nor did he ever do anything unpleasant. David was always kind to me. Customers like this are rare, and as time went on, my initial wariness turned into a slight guilt for thinking, he's paying good money just to see me. So, one day, I decided to ask him directly.
I'm really glad you come here to see me, but are you having fun? You can enjoy yourself more freely, you know?
Even though I knew that saying something like this might mean he'd never come back, I couldn't help but ask.
No, I come here because I want to see you, Francis. Is that so bad?
David said this, his cheeks slightly blushing with embarrassment. I couldn't believe he was lying, and I was genuinely happy that he enjoyed our conversations so much. Gradually, I started looking forward to seeing David as a customer and eagerly awaited his visits to the club. Several months passed since he began visiting the club regularly.
I want to date you with marriage in mind.
One day, he came to the club as usual, but this time, he brought a bouquet of flowers and said those words. I was surprised by the sudden proposal, but that very day, I decided to quit the club. From the time he began visiting the club, we both knew about each other's past divorces, and I knew that David had taken custody of his daughter. I genuinely wanted to be a proper mother this time. That's the story of how we ended up together. I wasn't sure how much David had explained to Alethea or how much she understood, but I knew she probably didn't think well of me. Even though I had quit the club when we became a couple, club work was still club work. I had come to feel a sense of pride in my job, but I understood that most people wouldn't get it. Still, I wanted Alethea to gradually accept me as her mother, so I was determined to make an effort. However, 1 year later, David passed away. When he died, to support Alethea on my own, I returned to the club I had once quit. From then on, to solidify my resolve to be Alethea's mother, I started calling her Allie.
Allie. It's dinner time.
When I first called Alethea Allie, she looked surprised for a moment. But that was her only reaction, and my plan to get closer to her as a mother didn't seem to touch her heart. Alethea, who had already struggled to fit in at school, completely stopped attending after David's death. However, after starting junior high school, Alethea began to stay out all day and night, hanging out with friends I didn't know where she met. She never consulted me about anything. As her mother, I gently advised her that what she was doing wasn't good for her, but her resistance grew stronger, and it often turned into arguments. Whenever there was an opportunity, Alethea would say to me, "You're not my biological mother." Whenever she said that, I couldn't say anything more. Indeed, although I had officially become Alethea's mother, we still hadn't become a real family. David's death happened just when we were starting to slowly become a family of 3. Even I didn't know how to spend time with Alethea after suddenly becoming her sole caregiver. Even so, as I began to feel sad about her words, I thought that perhaps I was gradually becoming her mother in spirit. The time Alethea and I spent together at home gradually decreased. Even when she wasn't at home, I felt relieved if I saw signs that she had been there when I returned, thinking, at least she's alive and well today. However, most of the time when I came back from work, she wasn't home, and I often found that money had been taken from my wallet. Even though we are family, that's something I cannot tolerate. When Alethea was home, I gently told her,
If you're in trouble, please talk to me. Don't just steal money from my wallet.
But she yelled, "Shut up," and ran out. At this point, I wondered if I would ever be able to build a good parent-child relationship with her. Just before she finished junior high school, there was a day when I came home earlier than usual. Since she was usually asleep at that time, I entered the house quietly. Today too, I quietly unlocked the door and entered the house, only to hear sobbing from the back room. Alethea was crying alone. Even when David died, Alethea never shed a tear in front of me, but now I realized for the first time that she cried alone where no one could see. I listened quietly, trying not to make a sound. Why did Mom leave me? Why did Dad have to die? The new mom didn't listen to me. Even though she rebelled against me, she was still a junior high school student. Both her parents were gone, and the only one left was a mother in name only, with no blood relation. Moreover, having that mother work at a club must have been unbearable. I realized too late what was truly important. I hadn't noticed the chance Alethea had given me. It was one holiday. Before Alethea left, she muttered softly, "Hey, Francis, why don't you quit working at the club?" It was the first time she had said anything about my job. At the time, I didn't understand why she said that. But now I understand. Alethea was giving me a chance to quit working at the club and become a normal parent. Yet I can't quit because I need the money to raise you. Besides, I'm proud of this job now. Responded. That night, Alethea didn't come home. She might have been crying somewhere. If I remember correctly, it was after that day that she started coming home less frequently. I had completely lost my qualifications as a mother at that moment. If only I had thought more about her. I am a failure as a mother. I accidentally voiced my thoughts, and she noticed and ran out of the house. However, I couldn't chase after her. The image of her tear-stained, red face wouldn't leave my mind. I couldn't decide whether chasing her was the right thing to do as a mother or if I should leave her alone. I just stood there, crying alone. As if that day had never happened, our relationship remained unchanged. Alethea stopped going to high school and started working part-time every day, seemingly to avoid being at home. Of course, she never told me where or what kind of job she had. She probably stayed over at friends' houses because there were more and more days when she didn't come home. We're not related by blood. I'm not Alethea's real mother. But David entrusted Alethea to me, asking me to be a parent to her. That worry never ceased for even a moment. I don't know how many times I cried thinking about it. I wished for another chance, thinking maybe I could still make things right. Even so, all I could do was work hard, trying to raise Alethea as a mother. So I never realized I wasn't making time for my daughter as a mother. What was truly needed wasn't money, a clean house, or delicious meals, but time spent together. One day, as usual, I came home after work to find the house lights on, which was rare. By this time, Alethea only came home when I wasn't there, so it was unusual for us to be at home together. When I opened the front door and went inside, I saw Alethea rummaging through the closet.
Stop doing things like a thief!
Maybe because I was tired from work, the first words out of my mouth to my daughter, whom I hadn't seen in a while, were those rather than a welcome back.
What? This is my house too. Everything here is mine as well, right?
She said, holding a bank statement that I had been saving under her name for a long time.
Wait, that's something I was saving to give you when you grew up. What are you going to use it for?
When I frantically questioned her, she coldly replied, "I'm getting married." I had so many questions. Who is the person? Where did you meet? Have you met their family? What about the wedding? But no matter what I asked, Alethea didn't answer anything. It's always been that way. She never tells me anything important.
Just shut up. It has nothing to do with you. Leave me alone.
Alethea was the first to raise her voice.
Wait a minute. It's not right that you don't tell me anything as your mother.
I couldn't help but get angry too, and it seemed like an argument was about to start.
Listen, you're an embarrassment. You're not invited to the wedding. I don't have a mother who works at a club. My mom is supposed to be divorced and out of the picture.
With those final words, she left the house. Everything inside me collapsed with a crashing sound. I had neglected myself to raise her all this time. My job was criticized, and I was told there was no such thing as a mother. My entire existence was denied. Alethea probably won't come back home anymore. My role as a mother crumbled away so easily, ending abruptly. I was frozen in the middle of the room that Alethea had trashed, unable to move for a while, but eventually, I knew I couldn't stay like this and made a phone call. Several months passed, and today is Alethea's wedding day. I was watching from the shadows as she stood in her wedding dress. I never wanted to see Alethea in her beautiful dress under these circumstances, I thought. Today was the first time I saw the groom's face. Tall, with a kind, mature face, he smiled gently at Alethea. The woman beside me asked, "Are you ready to make your move?" and I nodded firmly. With a composed demeanor, I said, "Excuse me," and entered the room with the woman. Hearing my voice, Alethea and the groom's family turned to look at us. When Alethea realized one of the people entering was me.
"Ma'am, I told you not to come,"
she shouted. The woman next to me replied,
"Excuse me, but are you a staff member of this venue?"
She pretended not to know me. The truth is, the woman beside me was indeed a staff member at the venue and my biological daughter, Johanna. Alethea understood this too and glared sharply at Johanna. Although Johanna was not the couple's planner, they must have met a few times during the preparations. Now, for the first time, the two sisters who had never met were glaring at each other. Even after my divorce from my ex-husband, my relationship with Johanna remained good, with occasional phone calls and meeting once or twice a year. The day Alethea left home, the person I called was Johanna. I told her all about the incident with Alethea on the phone. Even after the divorce, Johanna continued to treat me as her mother. After my divorce from my ex-husband, I worked hard at a job at a club, which I now enjoy, but it was very tough at the time. With my ex-husband having custody, I felt I no longer had the right to see Johanna, so I spent my days just going back and forth between the club and home. Maybe I wanted to forget about Johanna quickly. After being engrossed in club work for a year, I received an email on my smartphone. It simply said, "Mom, I want to see you." She must have gotten a smartphone when she started junior high school, and I knew immediately that the email was from Johanna. I was happy that she still thought of me as her mother despite losing my right as her mother. However, I lacked the confidence to meet her, thinking I didn't deserve it, so I couldn't reply to her email for a while. After exchanging a few more emails, we decided on a date and place to meet, and it was really going to happen. On the morning of the meeting, I was so nervous I couldn't eat breakfast. I was terrified that this might be the last time I saw her. Although I wouldn't say, "Let's cancel the meeting," I was so worried that she might be disappointed. When I arrived at the meeting place, I saw Johanna. Children grow up so fast. Even though it had only been a year, Johanna had grown taller and her hair had grown longer since the last time I saw her. "Johanna." I called her name timidly. When Johanna heard my voice, she turned around and, as soon as she saw my face, she ran to me and hugged me tightly.
"Ma'am."
I felt my grown-up daughter in my arms.
"It's been a long time,"
I said to Johanna, holding back my tears.
"Ma'am, I missed you so much."
Just those words melted away all my worries. We entered the cafe while chatting, and I ordered Johanna's favorite parfait and orange juice, along with my coffee. Johanna talked a lot about her current life. Her ex-husband is still working as usual, and Johanna handles more than half of the housework. Her mother-in-law also comes by regularly to help with chores. Johanna is passionate about cooking and proudly told me that her specialty is meatloaf. Although she divorced her ex-husband, she didn't come to hate him as a person. She believes that her ex-husband will take care of Johanna until she fully grows up. On a whim, I asked Johanna what she thought of me.
"After I divorced your father, Johanna, you lost your mother, and I know this past year alone has been really tough for you. I came prepared to hear that I no longer deserve to be called your mother.
As her mother, I shouldn't have been so weak in front of my daughter, Johanna. Yet Johanna smiled and began to speak slowly.
Dad and Ma'am decided to live separately, but that doesn't mean Ma'am stops being my Ma'am. I know that Ma'am cares about me. So let's continue to be mother and daughter in our own way.
Hearing this, I felt that Johanna was an incredibly mature person, far more than I deserved to call my daughter. Despite being such an imperfect mother, she still allows me to be her mother. From that day on, Johanna and I started keeping in regular contact and meeting up often. I gave her birthday and Christmas presents, gift cards, and celebrated her milestones like school entries and graduations. Although our relationship was different from a typical parent-child relationship, I began to believe I could do my best as Johanna's one and only mother. When I decided to remarry, I made sure to meet with Johanna and talk to her. Not only was I getting remarried, but my new partner had children. I was about to become a parent to another child. Of course, this didn't mean I would lose interest in Johanna, but I knew she might feel conflicted. Still, I didn't want to remarry without being honest with Johanna, so I decided to tell her the truth.
If Ma'am can be happy with this, it's fine. But will you stay the same even after you remarry?
Johanna asked anxiously. Of course. To ease her worries, I hugged her tightly. Reassured by my words, Johanna gave her blessing for my remarriage. Even after remarrying, my relationship with Johanna remained unchanged. At first, I avoided talking about Alethea, but when Johanna asked me to share about my stepchild, I began to open up. Though Johanna never expressed a desire to meet Alethea, and I didn't want them to meet either, she seemed to enjoy hearing stories and seeing pictures of Alethea. Johanna and Alethea were close in age, and Johanna often gave me advice on dealing with Alethea, knowing my struggles. After graduating high school, Johanna went to technical school and then started working as a wedding planner. Though she became busier after starting her job and we met less frequently, our bond remained strong. After getting the details over the phone, Johanna suddenly asked,
"What's Alethea's last name again? How old is she?"
She inquired about Alethea's details so suddenly, wanting to know everything. I told her everything I knew, and she said, "Maybe," and left the room for a moment. She returned hastily, speaking in a loud voice.
"Alethea is having her wedding at our venue. My senior colleague is in charge."
Then she added,
"As your daughter-in-law, I can't give you the groom's information, but I have an idea,"
she said with a gleeful tone. Johanna's idea was to hire me as a temporary staff member at the wedding venue. Is that really okay?
"It's my fault for not being able to become her mother in the first place."
I was filled with anger at Alethea, but I also felt inadequate and pathetic, lacking confidence.
"You've done enough. Alethea is old enough to be called an adult. We need to be strict this time,"
Johanna said, and I decided to go along with the plan. So I appeared at Alethea's wedding in the same suit as the venue staff. Seeing me suddenly appear as a staff member, Alethea was flustered. The groom, Hayden.
"Mom? What does that mean? You said you were divorced and had no contact,"
asked. Hearing Hayden's words, Alethea stopped glaring at Johanna and hurriedly put on a forced smile for Hayden.
"No, it's just, this person stalked me and found out everything."
She made a desperate excuse. Hayden, looking puzzled, said, "We'll talk about it later," and the ceremony proceeded. I participated in the wedding as a staff member until the end. Alethea glared at me and Johanna several times, but I didn't mind. For the past few months, I took a break from my club work to train at the wedding venue and help with other weddings, working as a regular part-time employee. All for this moment today. Hayden's family asked Johanna for an explanation.
We are staff, so we cannot provide personal information. Please ask the bride.
But she replied. Exhausted in body and mind, Alethea completed the ceremony. At the end of the wedding, I said to Alethea,
Congratulations, I wish you happiness.
And left the scene. Alethea probably wanted to portray me as a stranger. She didn't give a proper response, only a frustrated expression was visible. Later, Johanna asked,
How about continuing to work at the venue?
But I told her, my current lifestyle suits me, and returned to my club work. With the misunderstandings with Alethea now resolved, I can finally focus on work again, and my sales have been steadily increasing. On the other hand, Alethea found out about her mother's secrets coming to light and even getting married for money, leading to an immediate divorce. Later, Johanna told me that the wedding was far more extravagant than the average wedding. This meant that her marriage partner was quite wealthy. After the divorce, Alethea has been jumping from man to man, looking for someone to rely on, while moving from place to place. If Alethea had sincerely apologized and reached out to me, I would have accepted her as her mother, but it seems she absolutely doesn't want to rely on me. She has never come home or tried to contact me. Johanna and I have kept in touch regularly. Today, we were at the cafe where we reunited after a long time.
Thank you so much for everything with Alethea. I'm a failure as a mother, no matter how old I get.
I confessed to Johanna with a bitter smile.
It's okay. You'll always be my beloved mom. Besides, I wanted to give you this.
With that, she handed me her wedding invitation. My heart leaped at the thought of being able to attend as her mother.
My dad needs special meals for his condition. Nancy, can you make them for him?
While I was still processing this unexpected request, standing in front of a man in a wheelchair, my eldest son's wife, Christina, spoke up.
What? You want me to make those meals? Well, there's no one else we can ask but you, Nancy.
From what she told me, 6 months ago, Christina's parents were in a car accident. Her mother died, and her father, Benjamin, became paralyzed from the waist down.
Are you seriously expecting me to take care of him, Christina? If you don't do it, Nancy, who else will take care of Dad then? This is a major responsibility, and I haven't heard anything about it.
While I was still reeling from the shock, my eldest son, Brian, chimed in. We're about to go on a trip abroad. We won a vacation to Hawaii in a raffle at the mall the other day. It'd be a shame to cancel it now, right?
This is unbelievable. He is your dear father. I'm sure he'd prefer to be taken care of by his own blood rather than by a complete stranger like me. Yet, you're planning to leave your own father with someone he doesn't even know while you go off on a fun vacation abroad.
My heart felt like it was being crushed. Unlike when I was taking care of my own husband in our house, living in an apartment now means dealing with stairs. How am I supposed to manage taking care of someone in a wheelchair all by myself? I was incredibly angry at my daughter-in-law, who seemed to care more about her own enjoyment than her family, and at Brian, who just followed along with whatever she said. Please, just do this for us. We're going to miss our flight. With that, Brian and Christina left for the airport. In the now silent parking lot, Benjamin was left behind, staring blankly into space. A heavy atmosphere weighed down on my heart. My name is Nancy, I'm 61 years old. I work part-time and live a modest life as an ordinary housewife. 5 years ago, I lost my husband, Edward, to illness after being together for many years. After that, I moved to a small apartment. The house we lived in was one Edward had built when he was young, but after he passed away, and with our only son now living on his own, there were too many unused rooms.
It feels even lonelier in this house without anyone to talk to.
Talking to Edward's photo every day, the feeling of loneliness grew, which was one reason I decided to move. The new apartment was a bit further from the town where I used to live, but
the supermarket I work at is close by, and it's just right for living alone.
The landlord and the neighbors were all friendly and cheerful people, so I quickly got used to my new life. By the way, the house we sold fetched a decent price, but I've never been one for luxury. Also, I consider the money from the sale to be something Edward left for me.
I should save this money for an emergency.
With that thought, I became even more frugal than before. My only pleasure was the monthly dinners with my housewife friends, where we enjoyed good food. I'm sure my late Edward is up in heaven now. Why don't you treat yourself a bit more? He'd probably be saying with an amused smile. One day, my eldest son Brian, who lives far away, came to visit me for the first time in a while. Seeing Brian again for the first time since Edward's 2-year anniversary felt surreal. Brian, who works as a construction worker, has become tanned and looks every bit the carpenter since I last saw him. Every time we meet, I can't help but comment on how much he's changed. Again with that? I'm 33 now. I'm in charge of the younger guys at the site. You need to realize I've grown up. He would respond, somewhat embarrassed.
To me, you'll always be my child.
Aren't you lonely living here all by yourself? Brian, perhaps to cover his own embarrassment, suddenly changed the subject. I'm not exactly in a position to live luxuriously, but as a son, I worry about my elderly mom living alone. The Brian I once thought of as a child now showed concern for me. While feeling proud of him.
Thanks, but I still feel young. I'm not old enough to need to rely on someone as inexperienced as you.
I tried to show some bravado. Well, if you're doing fine, I guess it's not my place to interfere. He fell silent for a while, then after a moment to collect his thoughts. The truth is, I'm thinking of getting married soon. He looked me straight in the eye, speaking with a formal tone.
Really? Congratulations! You're finally getting a wife. So, what's she like? How old is she? What does she do?
I bombarded him with questions in my excitement. Her name is Christina, she's 3 years younger than me. She works at a boutique, and we met at a party. Brian hesitated to talk about how they met, but that didn't matter to me.
How you met doesn't matter. If you're getting married, I'm thrilled for you. Congratulations, Brian.
I reaffirmed my happiness for my son. After we get married, I'll make sure to visit regularly. If that's okay with you, of course.
There's no problem with that. I always welcome you. But won't Christina mind if I'm too involved? I've heard that young women today don't like their mothers-in-law meddling.
I don't think Christina would mind. She's kind-hearted, has a lovely smile, and I'm sure you'll like her.
That's wonderful. I'm looking forward to meeting her. And if you two have children, you better show me my grandchild soon.
That's probably why mothers-in-law get a bad reputation. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. For now, I just want to enjoy my life with her.
You're right. I'm sorry.
A week later, Brian brought his fiancée Christina to meet me.
Nice to meet you, Nancy. I'm Christina.
Well, what a lovely smile you have. Nice to meet you too. I knew she was 30, but she looked even younger and was as charming as Brian had said.
Brian is really lucky to have found her.
I thought to myself, just as.
Is this family home an apartment? Not a house?
Christina furrowed her brow and questioned Brian. I told you before, didn't I? Mom sold the house and moved. Brian whispered to her, trying to keep me from hearing. Pretending I hadn't heard.
It's a small place, but come in and have some tea.
I welcomed them. Christina peered into my room from the entrance.
This is unbelievable. I could never be friends with someone living in such an old apartment.
And exclaimed loudly. Hey, Christina. Brian tried to stop her, but it seemed she didn't hear him.
We're getting married, Brian. There's no need to greet a complete stranger, especially not the mother-in-law.
I turned off the stove, the water no longer boiling. Yes, that's right, just a complete stranger. The joyous feeling I had vanished, replaced by a dark cloud.
All right, Brian, now that we've greeted Nancy, let's go. I have some shopping to do.
Christina quickly descended the stairs to the parking lot.
Is she really the right person for you?
I asked Brian, my voice filled with concern. She has her good sides too. Brian defended Christina and then left with her. A month passed without any word from Brian.
Hey Brian. I know you're busy, but what about the wedding plans?
I finally decided to call my son. Brian sighed deeply, sounding burdened. Christina has her own schedule. When the wedding plans are finalized, I'll let you know. He answered apologetically.
Is that so? I don't mind the timing. But we need to inform the relatives, so you should tell me the details soon.
I know.
Don't get mad.
I'm hanging up now. Hello? Brian raised his voice slightly.
I'm not mad. I just want to know the details of the wedding.
Brian laughed. Sorry. It's not about you. Just something else.
Seriously, how long are you going to be on the phone?
I heard Christina's annoyed voice in the background.
Christina is there? Could you put her on? I've only met her once.
Ouch.
All right, I'm hanging up.
Sorry, Mom, we have something urgent now.
I'll call you later.
Brian hung up abruptly without waiting for my response.
Is she already controlling him before the marriage?
I wondered to myself.
If they're happy, I should stay out of it.
I tried to convince myself. But another month went by without any contact from Brian. Hey Mom, it's been a while. Glad to see you're doing well. Brian showed up at my apartment unexpectedly.
Are you two really doing okay?
Brian looked apologetic. We actually already had the wedding. I was stunned.
What? We haven't even informed the relatives.
Christina said it wasn't necessary.
What do you mean?
She said she couldn't invite someone living in an old, musty apartment to the wedding. I couldn't believe my ears. Christina had said something that cruel.
So, her parents attended?
Of course. Lots of relatives and friends were there. It was quite a lively event. Brian had a cheerful smile as he recounted a happy memory. Seeing his attitude made me feel so exasperated that I almost burst into tears. How can you laugh so carefree when your own mother has been left out like this? Brian, trying to be considerate in his own way, said, That's why I'm here to see you, Mom. I'll keep visiting her regularly, so don't worry. He said that, but after visiting 2 or 3 more times, he completely stopped coming. Even when I occasionally called him, he would cut the conversation short, saying he was busy. Brian used to be so straightforward, but maybe he's been influenced by Christina. My doubts about Brian began to grow. About 6 months after the wedding, Brian called me for the first time in a while. I'm thinking of coming over this weekend.
Aren't you busy with work? Are you sure you have the time?
Honestly, I was happy my son was coming to see me, but I expressed my concern for his schedule instead. It's fine. Besides, this time I'm not just coming alone. Christina and her family are planning to come along too. Is that okay with you?
Christina's family? You mean her parents?
Yeah. You haven't met them yet, right?
Of course not. You guys went ahead and had the wedding without telling me, so I never had a chance to meet them.
When I lightly protested, Brian laughed on the other end of the line.
I've apologized for that many times.
Christina suggested that we should all meet this time.
She did? Really?
I was surprised that Christina wanted to introduce her family to me. This is the same woman who mocked me for living in a shabby apartment and didn't invite me to the wedding. What could have changed? Nevertheless, I was genuinely happy that my son was taking the time to come see me, despite his busy schedule. Even if Christina had some ulterior motive, I had no reason to refuse their visit.
All right. This weekend then. I'll be looking forward to it.
Thanks, Mom. I really appreciate it. I felt a bit uneasy about the excitement in his voice. Why would he be thanking me for this? There was no reason I should be thanked for meeting Christina and her family. Besides, there was another thing that worried me. It might not be a big deal, but my current apartment is just right for one person. It wasn't meant to accommodate a large group. So, if Brian, Christina, and her family came over, there wouldn't be enough space.
Well, if it comes to that, we can just go to a nearby cafe.
Thinking that, I didn't take the problem too seriously. On the day Brian and his wife were supposed to visit, I felt restless from the morning. I usually keep the place clean, so it wasn't too dirty. But since important guests were coming, I cleaned more thoroughly than usual. Cleaning done, laundry done. All set. Just as I finished hanging the laundry on the balcony, I heard a familiar car engine stopping in the parking lot downstairs. I smiled at myself in the bathroom mirror, practicing over and over again. I have to make a bright impression. Though Christina was one thing, I imagined what her parents, whom I had yet to meet, might look like and rehearsed my greetings in my head countless times. I listened carefully at the front door, hoping to hear footsteps coming up the stairs, but the stairs remained eerily silent. Curious, I opened the door and looked down at the parking lot to see Brian and Christina doing something around Brian's familiar car. Christina was unfolding a wheelchair, and Brian was helping a man out of the back seat. The man had some gray hair, but he looked a bit too young to be called elderly. And the man being helped seemed unaccustomed to the situation, moving awkwardly with Brian. I quickly ran down the stairs and headed toward Brian and the others. "Mom, you came to welcome us." Brian noticed me and smiled. "Let me introduce you. This is Christina's father, Benjamin. As you can see, he's in a wheelchair."
Oh, my.
Feeling sorry for the man in the wheelchair, I was at a loss for words.
Dad prefers special meals. Nancy, can you make something for him?
Christina suddenly said something outrageous.
What? You want me to make special meals?
I was bewildered by the unexpected request, and Christina added,
"Who else is there? You're the only one we can ask, Nancy."
She said this as if it were the most natural thing in the world, smiling all the while.
It was right after our wedding, so about 6 months ago. Mom and Dad got into a car accident while on a drive. Mom passed away, and Dad miraculously survived. He just got out of the hospital recently, but he's paralyzed on one side and is in a state of shock, so he really needs the family's support.
Oh, that's a pity. I felt genuine sympathy for Benjamin. But then I tilted my head in confusion.
So why do I have to make his special meals?
I thought it was only natural that Christina, his daughter, should make and feed her father. I asked Christina, Christina, with a pouty smile, said,
I'm just not suited for caregiving. If Mom were alive, she would have done it, but since she's gone, there's no one else.
Are you really expecting me to take care of him, Christina?
Yes, as I've been saying. If you don't do it, who else will take care of Dad?
Christina said as if it were the most obvious thing in the world.
I haven't heard anything about this.
I was stunned by the sudden turn of events.
But we talked about it on the phone, remember?
Bringing Christina's family over. You promised you'd take care of her dad. Brian looked at me, surprised.
I don't remember making any such promise.
Really? Well, anyway, that's the plan now. So I'll be counting on you to take care of Edward for a while. Thanks. Brian gave a slight bow. It's not like I can just accept this so easily.
I can't believe you're springing this on me. We have stairs here, and how is Benjamin going to manage living with a complete stranger?
Benjamin stared blankly into space, unable to articulate his feelings.
Isn't it the family's responsibility to take care of their own? Look at me, Nancy. Can't you see I'm not cut out for heavy lifting?
We're going on a trip. We won a trip to Hawaii at the shopping mall raffle. Canceling it now would be such a waste. Even though Benjamin didn't say anything, I knew he would prefer his daughter's care over that of a stranger like me. Yet Christina was pushing Benjamin onto me and planning to go to Hawaii without a care.
This is unbelievable.
I fumed. Ignoring my frustration, Christina continued.
If you don't feel comfortable with just you, why not hire a professional home care worker? Brian told me you got a lot of money from selling your previous house.
I glared at Brian. Brian quickly looked away.
You told her that?
Christina was already seated in the car, honking the horn to signal they were ready to leave.
We have no choice but to rely on you, Mom. Sorry, but we're going to miss our flight.
With that, he got into the driver's seat, started the car, and drove off before I could stop them. Benjamin stood there silently in the deserted parking lot, staring into the void. Nancy, what's going on? Helen, the landlord, had come out to see what the commotion was about. I was at my wit's end and explained the situation to her. Helen shook her head. That is ridiculous. There are stairs here, and it's hard for one woman to handle caregiving alone.
But we can't just leave him out here. We need to get him to his room at least.
Honey, is Matthew around? Helen, grasping the situation, called out for Matthew, who lived in the same apartment complex. Matthew, a 47-year-old man, worked for an equipment company during the week. He had a strong build from playing rugby in college.
I'm so sorry to bother you on your day off.
I apologized, bowing my head slightly. No problem. We help each other out in times of need. Matthew easily lifted Benjamin onto his back, while I folded the wheelchair and carried it to my apartment.
We got him to the room, but the question is what to do next.
Helen sighed deeply, feeling the weight of the situation as if it were her own problem.
I'll help as much as I can whenever I have the time.
She offered.
I can help on my days off too.
I'm strong, so feel free to rely on me. Matthew said with a big smile. Nancy, you always share your stew with me.
I've been looking for a chance to return the favor.
The heavy atmosphere lifted slightly, bringing me a sense of peace. Just then, Brian called. Oh, I forgot to mention, could you also take care of our 2 dogs? They need to be walked twice a day, morning and evening, and fed. The food and leashes are in our shed. Thanks. Brian said casually, as if it were just a side note while shopping.
Hold on a second. You're not suggesting the dog sitting is going to be at your place, right?
What are you talking about? Of course, it's going to be at our house, It might be a bit far, but please take care of it. Bye. He hung up before I could respond, cutting off the conversation just after delivering his demands. Brian and his wife's house is a 2-hour drive from here. Without a car, I have no choice but to use public transportation, transferring between trains and buses. Plus, I have to take care of Benjamin as well. If I have to do this commute every day until Brian and his wife return, it will be a huge expense. I felt the weight of the situation pressing down on me again.
While Nancy takes care of the dogs, I'll take care of Benjamin. I have experience taking care of my late husband.
Helen kindly suggested.
That's not necessary. I've had enough. Those two need to make amends for their mistakes.
I resolved to get back at my son and his wife and discussed my plan with Helen and Matthew. Both Helen and Matthew agreed with my idea.
You're right. This is too much for you to handle alone.
Exactly.
They need to learn a lesson.
They both supported my decision wholeheartedly. Benjamin, in a room with no familiar faces, was biting his lower lip, probably feeling lonely. As Benjamin stared intently at me, I had a sense he wanted to convey something.
Benjamin, do you have something you want to tell me?
Benjamin gripped my hand tightly. Thanks to his rehabilitation, his grip was stronger than I had expected. Bringing his face close to my ear, he said haltingly but clearly,
"Give them a good scolding."
Seeing the determined look in his eyes, I nodded.
Please leave it to me.
With his strong will confirmed, my resolve became unshakable. But even though I wanted to get back at them, I couldn't just abandon him. Doing that would make me no better than Brian and his wife, who left for their trip. Instead, I decided to use legitimate means to shock and unsettle them. I contacted an old acquaintance, a care worker who had helped with my late husband's illness. The care worker, though retired, said,
I understand. So, you want us to take care of Benjamin at the care facility until your son returns from his trip?
She assured me that she still had connections at her former workplace.
You're the only one I can rely on. I'll pay all the expenses up front.
Within an hour of our conversation, a transport bus from the care facility arrived.
Please take care of Benjamin.
Leave it to us. The strong staff easily lifted Benjamin onto the bus, taking him to the care facility.
Benjamin's problem is solved. Now for the next step.
I felt a weight lift from my shoulders and immediately moved on to the next part of my plan. I called the animal welfare organization Matthew had found.
A couple I know left 2 dogs behind while they went on an overseas trip. Can you please take them in?
Of course.
There have certainly been some terrible pet owners out there.
And so, both dogs were safely taken in by an animal welfare organization.
But aren't you worried that your sons might complain about this later?
Despite Helen's concern, I replied, I'm planning to move out and return to my hometown. I don't have any relatives left there, but I never want to see my son and his wife again.
That might be for the best.
Helen supported my decision, smiling a little sadly. A few days later, I paid Helen the penalty fee. Once I'm settled over there, I'll send you some local specialties.
If anything comes up, I'll give you a call.
Helen saw me off with a smile. Later, after I'd settled into living alone in my hometown, Helen called me. She detailed what happened after Brian and Christina returned from their trip. When the two arrived at the apartment I had lived in.
Mom, open up. It's me, your son. Dad's here too, right? Are you taking good care of the dogs?
But when there was no response despite their calls, Christina kicked the door in frustration.
What's going on? It's so noisy.
A burly man suddenly appeared, and the two of them shrank back, hugging each other. Helen, watching in silence, told them I had already moved out of the apartment.
So where's my father? And the dogs? Abandoning everything is just inexcusable.
Christina shamelessly berated me, Helen said. In reality, a new tenant had moved in right after I left, and it was now someone else's apartment. At that moment, several police officers arrived. Standing there in shock, the two were taken in by the police to explain the abandonment of Benjamin and the dogs.
There was such a commotion outside the apartment that a crowd gathered. It was quite a scene.
Helen laughed as she recounted the events. Although they weren't arrested, it seemed an irreparable rift had formed between Brian and Christina. Brian frequently called my smartphone.
She doesn't act like a wife at all, and whenever I come home tired from work, she just complains.
The more he talked, the angrier he got, his words pouring out like a broken dam, filled with complaints about Christina.
We ended up getting divorced. It's all your fault, Mom. Why did you have to do something so ridiculous?
But blaming me for it was entirely unjustified.
Who's being ridiculous here, really?
I responded lightly and had no intention of further arguing.
With the costs of taking care of Christina's dad and the dogs, and having just built a new house, we're still in legal disputes over property rights. If things go badly for me, it could be financially tough. So, Mom, you have a part in this too.
What's going on?
This is strange. Mom? Are you even listening to me? Hello? Mom? Maybe it's because we're in the countryside? The signal is bad. Please, can't we meet and talk just once?
His constant nagging on the phone became unbearable, so I finally hung up. I quickly set his number to block calls. Then, placing my hands together in front of my late husband's photo.
The tomatoes are starting to ripen. I'll be heading to the garden today.
I'm currently enjoying a peaceful life, funded by the sale of my house.